I don't know that. I think if somebody told you they knew that, they'd be lying to you. But it was, I mean, I've got a lot of my career advancements I can thank to Twitter, not just for being the town square of sports media, but like one of the first bigger opportunities I got in racing was when I was working at WSIL over in Carterville. They let me start covering local races around here, doing reports on the news under the guise of the racing superfan, what they called the segment. But a gentleman up in the central part of the state that was starting a new racing series saw the stuff I was posting on YouTube, the news reports I did at WSIL. Yeah. And he reached out via a Twitter DM that said, hey, we're starting this new dirt racing series. We're looking for a videographer to be at every race. Would you be interested? Yeah. So I very much have to thank Twitter for that. That was one of the first big racing themed steps in my career path that got me to where I am now. So when did you start working at TV3? Because I love how many people can trace like their media breakthrough opportunities back to Bonnie and Steve Wheeler. So I started through the co-op program that they did with CCHS. I think me too. I was the year before that. I think I might have been the one that came in after you. I started. Did you leave like early? I did. I only did one semester because I was the worst. I started there. My parents just reminded me of this when I told them I was going to do this, but I was started late in my junior year and then did a full senior year through that program. And then your co-op. Yes. Yeah. Because I went to do tech stuff for the high school because I don't think I was worth a crap for Bonnie and Steve and TV3 broadly. I think it just ended up not being a good fit because I was not the right fit. But like, holy cow, dude. Yeah. That's a jaw drop revelation, like right off the bat. Yeah. Yeah. So I stayed, the co-op deal was I'd go to school at CCHS till lunch every day and then go work out there at the front desk in the afternoons. Like the first hour of your day was filling in for the receptionist while she went to lunch. Yep. So I spent my whole senior year of high school addicted to the One Life to Live soap opera because that's what was on the TV in the lobby at the station while I covered the desk. So try as you may, you got into that storyline because it's what you had to watch on TV while you're sitting there covering the desk. But then I spent the whole senior year of high school there, and then when my program time ran out, I thankfully made enough connections in the back of the building that they offered me a spot as an associate producer on the morning show at WSIL. So all for my 4 years of college, 2 at John A., 2 at SIU, I worked the 3:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. shift at WSIL on the morning show, and then would go to classes throughout the afternoon. My jaw is to the floor, Ross. I had no clue coming into this. Episode 116 of the WTF Carbondale podcast, where we talk to interesting people about their interesting lives and we tie it all together with this little old place we call home. This was not a plant for this episode. I had zero understanding about where Ross and I's paths first crossed. But I got to tell you, I am so excited to go down this rabbit hole, man. All right. So we'll cycle back to this. You're like me. You're born and bred Carbondale. Yep. I was born at Memorial Hospital right here in town. Lived south of town here, I guess, kind of closer to the McCanda area. Yeah, we'll give you a break for being a Unity Point kid. Yep, K through 8 at Unity Point. Coming from the Giant City kids over here. What? No. I did a job shadowing thing. There was a point before the racing thing took over that I wanted to be a social studies teacher. And they sent me for a day. I job shadowed a social studies teacher at Giant City, but I cannot remember his name now for the life of me. But Mr. Baker, no, he would have been gone by then. Yeah, no, but that's the extent of my Giant City experience. Was my one day job shadowing over there before teaching fell off the career path radar. Oh man, you got anything that you look back on, like having grown up in Carbondale and been like, oh, this is the value of growing up in Carbondale that's helped me carry forward everything else that I've got going on in life. I mean, for where we're going to talk about a lot of racing in this episode, but like just purely geographically for how my career turned out, like the Midwest is a hub of dirt track auto racing in this country. So in Illinois, you are in the heart of it. It's Kentucky, Tennessee, it's Indiana, it's Iowa, it's Missouri. This is where to be. So it's couldn't have been a more perfect place for where my career turned out to start than right here in Southern Illinois.
Now, where do you work out of, or where are you based out of now?
I have been in the Charlotte, North Carolina area since the fall of 2013. Now. Okay.
Man, well over a decade at this point.
Yeah.
You've done it, man. Southern Illinois kid makes good.
Yeah, it's been, I said, I would have left Carbondale in 2012 after I graduated from SIU, spent a year in Iowa working for another company, and then moved in September 2013 for my current employer, the World Racing Group, and I've been there ever since.
That's awesome. So how many? So you did college at TV3, and then like where? So how did you? Were you still working there a little bit after college too, or what was the timeline on going?
I did my associates at John A. and did the 2 years for the bachelor's at SIU. But
did you do RT or did you do something else?
I did RT.
Nice.
RT with the emphasis in electronic journalism or whatever they called that at the time. But then I would have graduated in that June or that May, I guess, and then it would have been August when I moved to Iowa, and it would officially left Carbondale from there.
Dang, man, that's so cool. That is so cool. Well, I mean, what's life outside of racing? Or is, I mean, life legitimately 100% racing, and there is little in between. I mean, not that it's a bad thing. Like, love what you do and put no barrier between what is work and what is play.
Racing is really good at asking everything of you that you want to give to it. So it's my wife now, my wife Ashlyn has been is very good about helping to pull me outside of some of that when I need to be. So because I'm very guilty of getting a little too laser focused on some of that, but because I mean we can get more into it later, but the company I work for, we operate racing series and put on events across the country. And you know, our main series is 90 events a year from February to November. And then we have 5 or 6 other series that operate a similar schedule that all have anywhere from 30 to 50 events a year. So there could be on any given Friday or Saturday night, like tonight, for example, as we're recording this, one of our series is in North Dakota. We have another one up 3 hours away here in Coles County Speedway in the central part of the state. So we could have 4, 5, 6, 7 events going on simultaneously anywhere across the country. So racing is notorious for a pretty poor work-life balance. And I've been as guilty of that as anybody, but thankfully my wife kind of helps snap me back to reality sometimes when needed, and remember that I have a wife and 2 dogs and a mortgage and things that need to be focused on at home sometimes.
Hey, focusing on racing is focusing on the mortgage, right? That's how that comes together. There's a little bit of validity on that front. How did you and Ashlyn meet?
Bumble.
Nice.
So yeah, we're a Bumble success story. We met December 2018, started chatting on Bumble, had our first date like right before New Year's Eve, 2018. And started dating from there. I proposed to her deep in the throes of COVID in June of 2020. And
listen, you're stuck with me, honey. Yeah. Here's a rock.
We got married in November 2021.
Oh, that's stellar, man.
We're a Bumble success story.
Oh, man, and she got a fully formed you, right? She you came in, you were like, hey, honey, I got a career. I know what I'm doing here. There's
ready
no
to
question.
Rock. Let's go. So yeah.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Does she do a lot of traveling with you when this stuff goes on, or she's pretty much planted?
Yeah, she's my wife's a registered dietitian at the Federal VA hospital there in Salisbury, North Carolina.
Sounds like pretty solid
where we live. So she's pretty locked down at home. She doesn't really get their work trips for me, so I don't really take her like we're going on vacations or anything.
Yeah.
So no, she doesn't really do any traveling with me.
Other than, hey, okay, we're going home for a little bit.
Yeah.
Does she like Carbondale?
Yeah, it's growing. She still has it. I mean, we really only, if we get to come out, it's 1 or 2 times a year.
Yeah.
Even in the time we've been dating, she's probably barely been here 7 to
let me
times.
better rephrase that. Does she like Quattro's pizza? That's
she very much enjoys getting a nice challenge slice at lunch from Quattro's.
Man, I miss the thing that I miss most about working the Quattro's brand is the individual relationships with folks like yourself. Cause like you guys would buy into it like it was like you were talking to a pizza.
Yeah.
Right. Like it felt right all of the time. Yeah, it was a neat way to meet somebody and then to find out that, oh wow, even before the Twitter relationship, there was something else that I didn't even know we had crossover on. What a wild thing. Do you have other relationships with brands in the Twitter space similar to like how we would interact between like Quattro's and you as an individual? Like, have you found other folks that you're like, oh, I have this fun little,
nothing that I could think of with a brand like that. Yeah, I can't.
All right. So who's the most, here's a fun one. Who are the most like notable folks that pay attention to you and what you do on Twitter? Do you have like some racers out there or some industry folks that like pay attention to Ross who are like, he's our guy. We follow Ross for what we need to be in the know about in the world of our side of racing?
I mean, racing is yes and no. Like I've been blessed to have some friends that have gone on to do some pretty great things and become pretty successful people as drivers and athletes within the sport of racing. So to say that they're following me for anything would be a stretch, but I'm it's pretty surreal sometimes. I get to step back and just look at the network of people I've been blessed to build in the sport of racing and to kind of see what they've gone on to accomplish.
So how's it like changed over? Because you've had like the front row seat to this transition to streaming and the digital, the true digital revolution, right? There was building the backbone and the infrastructure to what the modern distribution systems of media have been. But there's really like, say the past 10 years between 2015 and now is when it's really come into like full focus. Like you've been at the forefront of that probably with the time frame that you've been participating in industry. What has that been like?
Yeah. So like I said earlier, the World Racing Group, the company I work for, we operate our own independent streaming arm where we broadcast all of our own racing events called dirtvision.com. And in my present role with the company, I don't have any day-to-day involvement with Dirt Vision, but prior to 2021, before that changed, I was very much a part of that. And it was, we would broadcast maybe only 40 to 50 races a year across all the events we put on, just depending on, what tracks we could get good internet installed and everything else. And, now they're using, satellites and cellular bonding boxes and all kinds of stuff so that we can stream from wherever. But, it was actually, candidly, I left World Racing Group in 2021 for about 10 months and went and worked in NASCAR in the Cup Series because I had kind of grown frustrated with how things had gone at World Racing Group because the video content stuff had kept progressing to a point and the streaming stuff had kept progressing to a point. And it was like, shit, I've got 2 full-time jobs right now.
Yeah.
Like I cannot keep up. We talked about work-life balance a few minutes ago. And so that I got, plus COVID year was a very hard year to work in sports. And so just all that combined together, by the time January 2021 rolled around, it was like, I got to get out of here. Cause all of that had grown. So then fast forward 10 months, they made me an offer to come back. I have nothing to do with the broadcasting because broadcasting takes years off your life.
Oh my God.
When you work in that stuff full time. So, now I just direct all of the non-live video content efforts for the organization. But yeah, the change that streaming has undergone across the sports landscape as a whole, but just in my little corner of the world at World Racing Group has been remarkable.
How does this stuff man, I mean, what does it take to get into this world? Like from a racer's perspective. I mean, this, of all the sports, like you think basketball, baseball, football, soccer, whatever, it's like pick up a ball at most, pick up some padding, heck, even hockey, right? You know, a good amount of gear, but like racing cars is expensive.
It's it's tough. You know, there's a lot of, it's kind of an odd topic to talk about when you work in racing, because folks, you know, people in racing love to deride, you know, the guy who, you know, they're just well off. His dad bought him that car. Like, it's expensive. The money's got to come from somewhere, right? Yeah. So like, so it's tough. But I mean, there's, you know, I've a guy that I work with loves to joke that racing costs the same no matter whether you're running a remote controlled car or you're in the NASCAR Cup Series, and it's however much money you want to throw at it. That's so it's, yeah, you know, it's a tough space to get into, especially as one of the drivers, and make a name for yourself. Cause it's not like it's just as simple as everybody has the same bat and same ball.
Yeah.
You know, it's very much equipment. You could be the greatest driver no one's ever heard of because you just don't have good equipment to sit in every Saturday night. So, it's a pretty unique and dynamic world in that sense.
Dang. That is interesting. I mean, and then on the actual, like the business side of it, the cost to build a racetrack, the cost to do, you know, all the different sides of what your company does. Like, you know, I can't imagine on the sponsorship side that it's like, okay, that, you know, advertising, the dollars that come in can cover every bit of it, because it's, you know, to an extent a niche, right? You know, everybody knows NASCAR, but like not everybody's like, oh yeah, dirt track racing.
Right.
Right. Not to say that there's not a pretty solid fanfare out there, but it's not the same level as, again, you know, what people, you know, spend and look at on like the football side of things.
Right.
Like, is that a crunch in the industry, is always trying to figure out kind of where that next dollar is coming from, or is it relatively stable?
Yes, but I think that's the same no matter where you are.
Yeah.
Any business wants to know where the next dollar is coming from. So I wouldn't say that's a unique problem that racing has, but,
sorry, I'm not trying to be overly critical of racing. I'm just
no.
It's always been very interesting to me, like how expensive racing is versus what racing can bring in.
Right. No, it's very like you want to have a good number of subscribers on the streaming platform. You want to see full grandstands at the event itself. You want to see marketing partners that want to be a part of the series or part of these single night race events across the country. So there's a lot of different silos that income can be generated within a racing company, but it just, you know, we're blessed with a pretty great group of people at World Racing Group who each kind of have their own silo to focus on. Just as long as everybody's pulling in the same direction, everything can work out.
How's the mix of folks that, you know, find racing as something that they can get themselves into now? Because I would imagine it's changed like many other things have over the years, from being just the good old boys club to like any number and kinds of people go, you know what? I want to go get behind the wheel of a car. I want to go shred around this track at how fast does a dirt track car go around a track? 70, 80, 90 miles an hour? I don't even know. Like,
some of the places our sprint car series go, they can, at the fastest half miles, they can hit 130, 140 on a dirt track. So, but I mean, we have the guys that are full time, like with our sprint car series, for example, the World of Outlaws NOS Energy Drink Sprint Car Series. They're from all walks of life and backgrounds. Our, you know, 11-time series champion who's been on the road for 28 years full time with the series is from Fargo, North Dakota. Our reigning champion who won his first series championship last year, David Gravels from Watertown, Connecticut.
Not to be confused with Dale Gribble. Sorry.
We have, you know, we have Sheldon Haudenshield, who's a, you know, second generation, you know, his dad was a badass back in the day, Jack Haudenshield. Like, it's guys, there's guys from all walks of life that strap into these things to put on a show every Friday and Saturday night for race fans across the country.
God, that's something special, man. Like, and I would imagine they are their own like wild breed of like you don't name something the outlaw racing series, right? And you not have some guys that are like, yeah, man, better than me robbing a bank.
Well, the brief, I'll do my best to rattle off the history brief, but
yeah, please.
The World of Outlaws Sprint Car Series was started in 1978 by a man named Ted Johnson, and at the time you were known. Prior to that, you were known as an outlaw if you ran races that were unsanctioned or were sanctioned outside of. Depends on how far back you want to go, but the USAC sanctioning or the AAA sanctioning back in the day, and he put a series together. There were guys that were running these bigger unsanctioned races across the country, and he's like, could we put something together that organized all this together? And they called it the World of Outlaws, and we're 3-4 years away from celebrating the 50th year of this racing series that's really grown to be the pinnacle of dirt track racing in the country.
Yeah. And like what do people like, I think of, racing as when we're talking about road racing, whether it's NASCAR or Indy or whatever else, I'm thinking from like the pit crew stance. So like in dirt track, are these guys just like on the track and it's go until the race is over, or do they have like similar like pitting functions and other things that they have to go through, just like the guys that are driving on pavement?
So our programs look a little different than what you'd see on like a Sunday afternoon when you turn on the the NASCAR Cup Series or whatever. But a lot of our races are either 1 or 2 nights at any given racetrack. But like on a typical race night, like last night, as we're recording this, the Sprint Car Series was in Grand Forks, North Dakota at the River City Speedway. The guys show up that afternoon, early at midday, unload, 6:30 p.m., 6-7 o'clock at night. You'll have what we call hot laps. That's your practice. The NASCAR guys complain that the 20-minute practice session they get now isn't enough. When they used to have 3 and 4 hours of practice on a given weekend. Well, our sprint car guys, hot laps, you get maybe 3 to 5 laps to look at the track for practice. That's all you get. You go back to the trailer, you'll have a few minutes to turn around, you come back out, you go right to qualifying. 2 laps on the clock. That sets your heat race lineup. So there were, I think, 33 cars up in North Dakota last night. So they get split into 4 heat races with 8 to 10 cars apiece, however that math worked out. But you'll run a 10-lap heat race. The top 5 go to that night's feature event. A heat race will only really be 8 to 10 laps. So it's quick, on and off.
Okay, all right.
The top 2 go to what we call the dash. Top 5 go to the feature. Everyone else goes to that night's last chance showdown, or B main, we call it in places. The dash, the top 2 finishers in each heat race, they redraw for how they start that night's dash. They'll run a 6-lap dash maybe. That how they finish the dash sets how they start that night's main event. The last chance showdown, all the guys that aren't locked into the show already from the heat race, they'll run a 12 or 15 lap race, take the top 5 or 6 of those guys, lock them into the tail end of the feature event. That gives you 24 cars that start that night's main event. Everyone else, thanks for coming. Try again tomorrow night or next week. You didn't make the show this time.
Yeah.
Then 24 guys push out, run a 40-lap feature last night. The number of laps our features can be depend on what size of the racetrack it is. So, because sprint cars don't make pit stops really.
Yeah.
So you got 4 tires and a set of fuel. And if it's a half mile, you're maybe going 25 laps. If it's a quarter mile like they were on last night, you'll go 40 laps. That's really where most of our features file in between. And how you finish the feature is how you get paid, how you earn points. And then the Sprint Car Series does that 90 times a year. And in November in Charlotte at our World of Outlaw World Finals, we crown a champion, and then we take 3 months off and do it again in February.
Now, are the tracks purpose built for dirt track? I mean, you're talking about the size of them, right?
It's a full-time facility. There's a few, rarely, occasionally you'll have like places that are not a racetrack that get built out to be a racetrack, or we've occasionally had a few asphalt racetracks that have put dirt down to host a World of Outlaws event, but these are all purpose-built facilities that are full-time. They'll have races all year.
Yeah.
Weekly events, but their World of Outlaws event may be their biggest event of the year and the biggest income generator for that racetrack. But they'll host weekly racing with folks that live locally around there that compete to earn a track championship or whatever, separate from what we do. But they could have that going on as well.
Do you find that I don't know, there's something a little bit more intuitive about the guys that race dirt than the guys that race anything else? I mean, and when I say intuitive, I mean like these guys just have to know it, right? They just have to feel it. Like, yes, anybody that races anything has to know it, has to feel it. But like you were talking about the NASCAR guys who are like, what do you mean I don't have 4 hours to warm up on the track? And these guys are just like, pull the cord, get in, we're going for a ride, boys.
Yeah. Like it's fascinating to watch dirt racers because the conditions are always changing, right? Like the more laps the guys are always watching, like, how much moisture content is in the dirt, right? Like prepping a dirt track is a dark art all its own that you can do another whole separate podcast on. But you're trying to watch the moisture content in the dirt, how much humidity is there in the air, or any number of things can affect how a racing surface turns out on a dirt track. So these guys are constantly, the lines that you're racing and the track conditions you see on lap 2 or 3 will be nowhere near what you see at lap 25 or lap 35 or lap 40. So these guys are constantly thinking, constantly evolving as these races go on. But things happen fast. Like, we have a few racetracks where they're turning lap times in the 9-second bracket. So things are happening quick. Like
you guys are talking about, so you're on a 1/4 mile track
in 9 seconds.
And that's in a circle.
Yeah.
That's people need to understand. Like, that's not like, oh, well, I have a 1/4 mile drag race in a 9-second car, which means we're going to 0 to 170 miles an hour, like that to make a wow.
But you got, we had at Jacksonville, Illinois last year, we ran a 35 lap feature that went caution free, green to checkers. Race was done in 7.5 minutes. So things happen fast.
Yeah.
Those guys have to be on their toes.
Well, and that's the interesting thing is you're describing this to me, and I'm not a sports guy for like anything, right? Like the thing that I am most interested in of anything is racing, more motorcycle than anything. But like, I can follow along with racing more than I can anything else, just because something with an engine. And thinking about what you're describing now, it's like, oh, what it sounds like is World of Outlaw racing is the style of racing that is built for the internet.
Yeah.
Like
it's interesting. It's built for the internet, built for streaming. It struggles on like broadcast over the air television.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things that can go wrong that delay or prolong a dirt track race that makes it difficult for network TV timing windows. But when you're streaming, it's whatever has to happen. If there is a weather delay because rain rolled through and the guys are going to need an hour to get the racetrack back in raceable condition, that's fine. But if you were on Fox or ESPN, that would be setting off alarm bells, right? Because we have an hour of air to fill, but we go off the air in 45 minutes, but what are we going to do? So, it's very much a sport that's built for the internet, built for kind of the modern sports watcher.
Yeah.
And so it all hinges on, our one thing that Brian Carter, our CEO at World Racing Group, is very big on is that we don't. Yes, we want to put on a good show streaming, but our main goal is always to get people to the racetrack.
Yeah.
Come sit in the grandstand. So you do not want to neglect the fan in the grandstand who paid their money to come watch for the fan that's sitting at home on their couch watching.
Yeah.
So you want to just run efficient shows with minimal downtime.
Yeah.
So, cause if people are sitting there for, if the weather is perfect, but folks, the track needs some work during the night.
Yeah.
It's an unfortunate side effect of dirt track racing. Sometimes you're going to have a 30 or 40 minute break so they can take the tractors out there in the water truck and get the track back in shape to put on the best race possible for the people that are in the grandstands and those watching at home. But it's the folks who are sitting at home they can go flip over to watch whatever else, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
folks sitting in the grandstands, 40 minutes of nothing going on is tough when it could be 9:30 or 10 o'clock on a Friday night and the kids are cranky because they're ready to go to sleep. And so there's a lot of, it's a balancing act really that you're trying to play out.
That's a tough, man. Cause like sports, anything sports wise, right, sells on the concept of consistency in the thing that you're seeing, right? There may be some overtime, there may be a rain delay, but for the most part, like, the structure of a baseball game and the time frame with which it's going to occur. Even your NASCAR races or your MotoGPs, your FIFA soccer, whatever the heck it is, right? But this is a really interesting aspect of World of Outlaw racing that, like, you guys always have to be on your toes, in a way that is different from just about all of your other counterparts in the sports production and, event world.
It's racing is a very unique place to carry a camera and do that for sure. Cause you're talking if it's great, but it's not great sometimes because like, say you don't quite get, you didn't quite nail the shot that time by, we'll give it 15 seconds. Like they're coming by again, try it again. Like the shot you wanted. But again, that guy who had that miraculous up on two wheels move last lap, he's probably going to have his shit settled down that next time and not look that badass again. Yeah. So I could probably be talking out of my depth here because I don't have much experience shooting other sports. But
yeah, go for it. Talk out of your depth, buddy.
in stick and ball sports, the action follows the ball, right? So that's kind of where you know where to be. Yeah. But when you shoot racing, like sure, there's a race for there could be one or two guys up at the front racing for the win.
Yeah.
But the coolest shot of the night could be from the guy that's running 24th.
Yeah.
And so maybe you miss it. Well, that sucks, but it's the coolest shot of the night could happen anywhere. It's not just one fixed point that you're following as the baseball or football goes from player to player. Yeah. Like you're talking a half mile of space you're covering, and that could happen anywhere. So it becomes a very challenging sport from a content perspective because, okay, you didn't get the cool thing that everybody is talking about on Twitter the next day to show them a cool replay of it. But
somebody in the crowd who had their phone out caught it. And
some cell phone video of it that's got 500,000 views, but you with your $10,000 camera didn't get it. Sorry. So it's pretty, but again, that's just a problem that gets amplified the bigger the racetrack gets, right? Like I'm thankful we only race on half miles. Yeah. We're not the guys with, a 1.5 mile NASCAR track on Sunday or a 2-mile road course or whatever. So
you got to run a $500,000, right. Indy 2000, whatever. So I don't even know if I'm using the right, acronyms but the super fancy cameras, the stuff that like, people don't even understand that, that there are cameras out there that cost, house money.
Right. Right.
for just a lens.
Right.
Now, do you guys, when you're on the live broadcast side, is it like single cam and you're chasing everything around, or do you guys have a couple different cameras,
we have operators? The guys now, Again, I don't have any day-to-day problem with that now, but they'll have probably 2 to 3, top cameras, we call it, on the roof of the track. They'll have a guy they'll have a leader cam, they'll have a battle cam, they'll go from there. Yep. But there could be 2 or 3 of those either up on the roof at the start-finish line or positioned around the racetrack, depending on where you can get a scissor lift or wherever else. And we'll have 1 or 2 like roaming wireless RF cameras that could maybe get you an infield shot.
Yep.
We have a pit reporter. There'll be one dedicated to the pit reporter throughout the night. A couple like trackside POV speed shots that get used. So there's probably, depending on the size of the event kind of dictates how much personnel you throw at it, right? Yeah. Like for some of the biggest events, you may have 9, 10, 11 cameras, depending. There's a lot that goes into that.
So you guys, and not every sport, they're running like you guys are a full vertically integrated operation, right? Aside from not owning the tracks that you have to run at.
We own one.
Okay, all right.
World Racing Group owns the Volusia Speedway Park in Barberville, Florida, about 30, 40 minutes from the Daytona Beach area. But we opened the season for all of our bigger series down there with a big 3-week kickoff called the Dirt Car Nationals, and we race. At this point, we race 17 nights out of 19 or 20. Like it's like a 3-week dirt track racing extravaganza down there. But it's very big to our CEO that we kind of get to set the tone for the year at a facility that we have full control over.
Yeah.
And go from there. So that outside of that one, yes, it's the racetracks that we don't own, but yeah.
But it's not like if you think of a NASCAR or, the F1 guys or anything else, like they own their rights to their brand and what they do, and then they hire everything else out from there, right? It's a third party crew, and it's at a racetrack that you don't own, and it's all this other stuff. But like you guys keep a lot of control internally over your operations, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but is different than a lot of how some of the other parts of the racing world and some of even the sports world works broadly.
Right. Like the guy sitting in the truck switching cameras, his checks get signed by the same guy that signs my check. Yeah. Like we're all part of the same parent company here. So, man, it really does. It makes us, we're a fairly large company at this point, but it's still kind of easy for us to pivot on a dime. So when we have to change things or update things, or we have a new sponsor to work in, it's still relatively easy to do. Cause we don't have to go to a third party with that. It's one email and you've talked to everyone who needs to see it. And, something changed on Wednesday, you'll see it new in the show on Friday night.
How big is World of Outlaws in terms of like employees? Do you have an idea of like how many folks you guys are?
It's, I don't even know what the full-time employee count is.
That's fine. And you don't have to ballpark. It's not
World Racing Group is the parent company that that's the letterhead on the checks every 2 weeks. But, God, I don't even know the ballpark at this point. Cause we have, again, 5-6 different national and regional touring series, between the Midwest up in the Northeast. We have series that run around the New York, Pennsylvania area. God, I couldn't even put up.
Do you guys run crews like remotely? When I say remotely, I mean like, is everybody based out of North Carolina where you're at, or is there like a home base where as many people as can be are based out of, or is it very much a like we've got a cluster of crews over here in this part of the country, we got a cluster of crews over there in that part of the country, and like we know that we keep 20 or 30 employees over here to do stuff because we know we've got this much action that happens on an ongoing basis? Like what's
so our main headquarters is in Concord, North Carolina. We're about 3-4 miles from the Charlotte Motor Speedway NASCAR track there in the hub of Concord. But a lot of our employees are there, but we have a lot of folks who are just full-time on the road, that we don't see unless we go out to the events ourselves. So you've got guys that are full-time, they own their truck drivers, and then they're officials at the events when they get the trucks driven to the next race, or a lot of our like series officials that are at every event are not based in the office. They like our series director for the sprint car series lives in Wichita Falls, Texas. So he goes back and forth to there when he's flying. We'll see him in the office maybe 3-4 times a year.
Yeah.
Depending. So we my title is director of video content. I've got a team of 3 people that I manage all of our non-live video content efforts across the company. And 2 of my 3 people are based in the office, but my guy that is full-time with the Outlaw Sprint Car Series still lives at his home in Chillicothe, Ohio, and goes back and forth to there because he's on the road every weekend. It's pointless to have him move to Charlotte, and he's going to not be home there either. So
have camera will travel.
Right. So it kind of varies depending on what the person's situation is within the company.
So what all kinds of content? I mean, you talk about being, the other side of, people have a pretty good idea what broadcast is, right? Broadcast is broadcast. That's it's live production, whether it's television or online or what have you. But for you, I mean, are you doing everything from commercial production to podcast to behind the scenes stuff to, let me try and not knock down my equipment over here. Like, are you doing like a gamut of things, or
we run the full, we did the podcast stuff for a while. That kind of ran its course. And, but myself and a guy, Justin Fiedler, who no longer works at World Racing Group, had about a 4 or 5 year run doing a Ward About Laws themed podcast, and just, everything has a shelf life, right? So that kind of ran out. But as for what we do now, yes, it's commercial production. If you owned a racetrack and you signed the contract to have one of our events come to your facility, as part of that, my team produces TV and radio spots for all those events that, we use for online digital marketing, but get made available to the racetrack owner and promoter that they can use for advertising in their local markets or their own social media or whatever they want to do. And, so we do social content, just telling cool human interest stories, or trying to educate people about the race cars themselves or the people that work on them, or, but we do, in addition to the event commercial production, we do, if we have our business development team brings a new sponsor in the door that wants to advertise within our broadcasts, like, we want to advertise, but we don't have our own commercial. Well, we go shoot a commercial for XYZ Incorporated, or if we don't shoot it, they say, here's all this B-roll we have. Yeah. Can you put something together for us? And
make it look like it fits within.
We get a spot scripted together and we produce a commercial that can start airing within the race broadcasts from there. So we touch a lot of both internal and external elements of the company to help with all facets of video content.
Man, could you have ever imagined that this was going to be the opportunity that you got to make a life out of?
It is. If you had told the guy in 6th grade in Bob Shaw's tech club at Unity Point School that this is where things were going to go, I'm not sure, because racing wasn't always on the career path radar in that sense. It wasn't until a little later in life where I was like, maybe this race car thing may work out. So,
have you always been a race car guy? Like, has this always been of interest, or did you
like when I was young, I maybe it wasn't necessarily. My parents have got pictures of me. I fell asleep in the grandstands as a kid up at DuQuoin on Labor Day weekend at the races at the fair. But by the time I got into 7th, 8th grade on up into high school, I was all in. It's a family. My family's been involved in racing around here for 3-4 generations at this point. So my great grandpa owned race cars that, my grandpa drove. And, when I was a kid, my uncle raced weekly over at the Southern Illinois Raceway on the far side of Marion, where I'm headed tonight to go watch my younger brother race after we get done with this interview. So it's, and we talked earlier about racing, asking like how much of you can put into it. Like you've got to have that passion for it, or I've seen people who didn't have that passion, who came to World Racing Group just for a job, get chewed up and spit out. Because racing can be a hard way to make a living, both just emotionally, physically, just it can be difficult. So you've got to have a passion for it and still get, those goosebumps when a race car fires off and you hear that noise and smell that race fuel burn. And it's got to be in your blood, or it can be a hard way to make a life.
Now, have you ever like been yourself in the driver's seat on things?
I did. I competed. I got to hot lap a car over at SIR east of Marion one time. But then the only time I've actually raced, there's a huge indoor event in Tulsa, Oklahoma every January called the Chili Bowl. It gets about 400 entries annually. Indoor dirt race in this big, it's the Tulsa Expo Square at the fairgrounds there, but it's 15 acres under one roof. Massive building. And it's my single favorite week of the year. I love that event more than life itself sometimes. And then back in 2017, Justin Fiedler, who I used to do the podcast with at work, he helped throw some funds together and we rented a car and I went and did it. And flipped and hurt my back and got a number of things, but I got to have the experience. Would not trade
flipped.
I'll show you the picture here when the show's done. Wouldn't trade that experience for the world. No desire to do it again.
Yeah.
Like I've had my fun. I don't care to line up and race side by side with somebody again. I tip my cap to the guys that do. It's an experience I wouldn't trade because it's made me so much slower to be an armchair quarterback.
Yeah.
When I do go through my daily life in the sport now. Cause like I wasn't going fast and saw how fast things could happen. So it's been a great experience in that sense because I'm much slower to judge when I want to question something I saw a good race car driver do.
Yeah. You're like, this is judge not lest me flip my own damn car one time.
Exactly.
Oh man. God. So your time at T, I'm just thinking back to you would have still they would have still been like smoking pipe tobacco in the back at TV3 when you were there. That was like at the tail end.
And all those guys back in engineering. Yeah.
Best of the best, man.
Those guys were great. It was, I don't think it can be overstated what Steve and Bonnie Wheeler did for a lot of young people in this area.
Yep.
In broadcasting. And, of course, wish them well in their retirement and everything else. My family tells me all the time about what's become of some of the broadcasting at Channel 3 now since that unfortunate sale, but they did so much for myself and so many young people in the area to get a chance in broadcasting early. And then, Mike Snuffer, who was the news director at the time, who let me,
yes, buddy.
I wasn't trained to be on air at that point.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell was I doing reports on the morning show or producing packages that Darren Kennard was airing in the evening news? Like I had no business doing that, but they let me do it. And I'll be damned if it didn't help turn into a whole career path.
Well, and that's always been the thing about old school TV3 was like, the ethos from Bonnie and Steve all the way down was like, you got to give these folks an opportunity to show that they can do it, or they're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
Not because they can't do it, but because you can't do it if the opportunity isn't there to do the thing.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it really is like, so the last one of these podcasts I did in like, maybe it was May, April of last year was Danny Valle. Danny was a more recent reporter for TV3 who had been there for maybe 8-9 years. I mean, he was, selling lawn care services like door to door before he was doing this, going to, and he was calling like, baseball games on AM radio or something for, local high schools or whatever. And he was going to school for RT. I don't remember all the particulars, but like, walks in for the interview with Steve, and Steve's like, all right, kid, come on in, like, get to it. And, or whatever it was, maybe it was he had gotten the job and like one day Steve walked by and was like, hey, I need you to do this, or, why don't you give this a run? And it was just like, boom, there it was. And now, this is life. He's a broadcaster because, and Bonnie, they've been at some point in time, especially now that I'm like really going to get the podcast back up and going and like give it some serious time and start booking some of these guests that I have meant to have on for years now. Like I'm going to get Bonnie and Steve to come on and talk about what they did to get there, because when they acquired the station in the early 80s, I mean, if I recall correctly, not that I was alive then, but from what I understand, it was like they were the anchors. They ran the thing.
Yeah.
Right. They plucked Jim Razor out of obscurity in a cornfield somewhere and said, you're the guy now.
Yep.
Right. Mark Kiesling and so on. I mean, it was just, they shaped the dynamic of information and culture and pride in a broader region for, the better part of 40 years. And it is, as your parents have told you, and as you've probably seen here and there, I mean, it is disappointing to see how TV3 has succumbed to the follies of, not having a good media group behind them. It's
unfortunate that it's an unfortunate part of life that you don't realize what you had until it's gone.
Yeah.
And I think that can never, it's hard to be more truer than with locally owned media.
Yep.
And I think that's what this region has experienced with that loss.
Yep.
Cause it's, again, it was a powerhouse there for a while, for sure.
Well, and I look at, so I've spent some time in KFES 12 and seeing just the difference in, how like newsrooms have changed dramatically at a local level over the years. Like if you go into a TV station now, you've got a handful of people in master control that are running cameras that are remote cameras, a PTZ or something else, at a distance. Your studio space is essentially, your anchors, your producers are on the back end feeding stuff into a teleprompter, and your master control is just making sure that they've got their cameras picked and they've got your audio up. Like it is a very different setting than even 10 years ago was, where a news, where an actual studio, not just the newsroom, but the actual studio would still be full of people, had to run cameras, had to feed scripts, had to do.
I'm forever thankful I got to experience that era of local TV news. Cause we'd get there at 3:30 in the morning. We had a couple hours to get stuff edited or turned back around from the night before to air in that morning show. And then there was one or two of us on the studio floor that were manually positioning the cameras for each deal. And I look back at some of the stuff that we got to do at that time, and it's, both good and bad. We were on the air that morning that huge tornado went through Harrisburg, whichever year that was in
2011, 2012.
And, we were on the air for 8 straight hours that morning. Well, I've got my phone out on the studio floor, like emailing Joey Hellaney and other professors over here at the college, like, not going to make it to class today. Like, we are still on the air.
I'm sure Joey was like, yep, nope, this is better than any classroom time you could ever get. Like, he gets it.
So that's it. Just so many great opportunities that I still think about that Steve and Bonnie and WSIL gave me.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, it shapes how you function now. And I talk about this a lot, like with our business and what we do and kind of the approach that we take to, the modern digital world, right? Like there are broadcast fundamentals that are not going away, no matter how microtized this equipment gets, no matter how flash in the pan the media itself becomes. Like, when people talk about, the way that the podcast world has really blown up over the past handful of years, right? Well, what is that doing? That is replacing a subset of media that was already like broadcast specific, right? And you have to have the same, considerations as you would as if this was, dial and switch type of production. Same as it is just, it's, push a button type of production. And anybody that misses that and they think they can be all digital first, that everything that they're doing is new, that everything, it's like, no, like the delivery is new, but let's be quite frank, like to be successful at this, all the core components are the same as they have been since the invention of radio, since the invention of television, since if we're talking about written stuff, since the printing press became a thing, right? Like if you don't understand the fundamentals of writing, if you don't understand the fundamentals of, just being able to, all of the different functional descriptions of things that you do with a camera, that you do with a microphone, all of these descriptions come from, an actual physical act that you have to use to utilize, right?
And I still, it's funny. Like I had this conversation with somebody briefly, and it's like, if I, no regrets, right? But like, if you had your life to live over and you see how things turned out, like I would have done my degree at SIU, like in more the like filmmaking, cinematography direction, and not the on-air broadcasting journalism direction, just because I think I see it to this day. Like I'm, you build your style as a shooter and as an editor over time. And I'm a very like utility editor and shooter. Like I'm not a very flashy editor with transitions or light leaks and all these crazy effects. Like, and that stems from my time in broadcasting. It's just, how quick can you get it sent back out the door?
Yeah.
Like, so it's your own step A, sets you up for step B. And so it's funny. I'm just to this day just not a very flashy editor because it's never been my style, and it got beat in your head working in TV that this needs to be edited yesterday.
Yeah.
So get it out the door.
Well, it's interesting that you say that one too, or you talk about it in that, direction as well, because you think about your audience in racing, right? Like, do you want your audience to be oohed and awed by the flash of the actual performance on the track? Or do you want them to just be bought into your flashy video that you put together? Right. And like, there's something to be said for your fit as the guy who says, hey, just, cut, proof, send it out the door, right? Like, you're not trying to overpower the core performance with your bells and whistles because you think, ooh, somebody needs to look at my skills and my videography and my editing and go, wow, look at how cool those transitions were.
Right.
Wow, look at how neat that angle was. You're like, no. The art is in the race. The art is not in what I do. What I do is meant to, pull out the art of the race at the end of the day. Right. Is that a fair, like...
Yeah. Attending a dirt race is a very sensory experience. Yeah. It's bright race cars, and it's, brushing the dust off your shoulders a couple times a night because you go home a little dirty and you got to clean your ears out when you get home. And it's remembering when it was too late, you should have brought earplugs because the cars are pretty loud.
Yeah.
It's a visual overload. It's a sensory overload. It's a lot of things. And so, when you put it like that, yeah, it's just showcasing that. Like, for this day, you'll put a lot of time and energy. I know this happens to us in racing, a lot of time and energy into a nice piece edited to music, to the beat. And you'll get some guy in the comments. It's like, whoa, turn the music down. I want to hear the motors. Like, so it's, it's funny. It's probably a universal experience across any kind of sports content, but yeah, it's just showing what the sport is without a lot of bells and whistles attached. It's hard to beat that.
So I love that. So a lot of what I talk about in my world of like what we're trying to build here is, this idea that the media that you consume through a screen has to be as representative as possible of the physical experience on the ground. Right. And it's like when you're producing around that concept, like, okay, well, what are you doing work-wise with your camera and with your microphones and with the way that you make an approach, not even necessarily just on the broadcast, or not even, necessarily on the broadcast side, but specifically on the creative, function side where you guys are at, the non-broadcast side, right? What are you doing to make it feel like somebody's smelling that gasoline, somebody's, got that rumbling in their ear, somebody's got, that tuft of dirt on their shoulder, like, having that approach, like, how is that helped like mold your successes over time?
what I said earlier, like, you've got to love this shit, right? So like, if you enjoy it, I think it's going to come across in the stuff that you edit and put out. So, and I remember I worked with a lady in my year in NASCAR named Jess Smith. And one of the bits of advice that she gave that stuck with me from that year I spent with her in 2021 was own your access. So especially when you're working in sports, like don't waste your time showing the fans something they could already see.
Own your access. God, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. That's good. That's the
like
point.
If you've got a camera but you're not trying, and we talked earlier about the guy with a cell phone who got the clip of the thing that was show them something they can't see from where they are, like that cool angle. Like, granted, I joke a lot that the graph of like how cool, like, there's the coolness of a shot in racing and the danger of the location that you got that shot from, and it's a direct graph this way. So the cooler the shots you got it, or the sketchier the location was that you had to stand to get that shot. So I've posted a few clips on raw clips on my own personal social media that I've gotten at racetracks back in the day, and like our HR lady, who I'm friends with on Facebook, would be like, I don't know that you need to show me this, or things like that. But just show people, be it a cool shot or that cool interview with that driver. Like, the access that a fan can have at dirt track racing is unmatched compared to a bit, NASCAR or anything else. You show up, buy a pit pass, and go meet your favorite driver. He's trying to get in the right headspace to go run for the night, and here comes somebody trying to talk to him. Like, so it can be a tough dynamic for those guys who are trying to be in that competitive headspace when they've got fans who want to come talk at the wrong time. But it's own your access is the one thing I always took away from Jess. So be smart, be deliberate about what you're shooting and where you're shooting it, and when you're asking that interview question, because if talking to a guy and, here's tonight's winner, man, what's it feel like to win? Well, everybody knows like what it may not know what it feels like to win the Knoxville Nationals, but winning's everybody's got to, be it a small win or a big win. Like, it's so get something out of them that the average fan couldn't get out of them.
And I hope that, you've gotten something out of this podcast, what we might call the true return of the WTF Carbondale podcast, episode 116, with my now good friend Ross Wece. Am I pronouncing that correct?
Yep.
Stellar. Thank you. Cause, I had no idea, not just about how ingrained into this world of racing that he is, but also just exactly where our paths intertwine. And I am so excited to get back to exploring more of these stories. That said, folks, have a good one. Whatever that one may be.